So finishing up the endocrine system, we're going to next go into the pancreas and then into some of the other uh, endocrine um, organs, some of the other secondary endocrine organs. All right, so your pancreas is a club-shaped organ in your abdominal cavity, mostly posterior to the stomach, has 3 regions: rounded head, middle body, thin tail. It secretes the pancreatic islets. Islets of Langerhans secrete hormones into the bloodstream. And then you also have these acinar cells, which act as an exocrine gland and secrete enzymes into the digestive tract. So they help out with our digestion. But we want to really focus, for the purposes of this chapter, we're going to be focusing on the hormones of the pancreas. All right, so you have the pancreatic islets, which contain 3 main cell types: alpha cells, which secrete the glucagon; beta cells, which secrete insulin, which everybody I'm sure has heard of; and delta cells, which secrete somatostatin. This is your structure of your pancreas. Notice its connection bloodstream, so that it can secrete its hormones into the bloodstream. It's also near the stomach because it secretes enzymes and that will be taken up into the stomach for digestion, we talked about. Right, so different types of cells will secrete the different hormones. Glucagon, which is, remember the alpha cells secrete the glucagon. Glucagon and insulin help regulate the glucose in our bloodstream, so it plays an important role. Glucagon produces secreted from the alpha cells. All right, promotes reactions that increase levels of your glucose. All right, so glucagon increases levels of your glucose. So breakdown of your glycogen. Remember, glycogen is how glucose is, one of the ways how glucose is stored in your body. Glycogen is just chains of glucose molecules. All right, so we break down glycogen, so that will release glucose. Formation of new glucose, which also happens in the liver. Breakdown of proteins in the muscle. Those amino acids can help make more glucose. Release of fats, the adipose can help make more glucose. And the formation of fuel molecules known as ketone bodies in the liver. Remember, ketones are chemicals made in your liver. I put a little note here: you produce them when you don't have enough insulin in your body normally to turn sugar or glucose into energy, so you make ketones. You need another source. Your body uses fat. Your liver turns this fat into ketones, a type of acid, and sends them into your bloodstream. Ketone bodies are 4 carbon molecules during fatty acid metabolism, released into the bloodstream, taken up by the skeletal and cardiac muscle cells. These cell types are able to oxidize ketone bodies for fuel, unlike liver cells. So liver cells can't do it, but your skeletal and your cardiac muscles can. When you have extreme caloric restriction, some people are on this keto diet, so they cut down all their carbs. You have this rapid ketone body formation, so your body sort of uses more fat to make energy, which sounds good for weight loss, but it can overwhelm the capacity of cells to use them and accumulate in your blood, and can cause lowering of your blood pH, which is not good, because remember, our body wants to stay at 7.3, 7.4 pH. If we lower our pH because of these ketones in our body, it can go into what we call ketoacidosis, which can affect our nervous system. All right, glucagon secretion is inhibited by both elevated blood glucose levels. So glucagon is your body trying to make more glucose, increase your blood sugar. But once your blood sugar gets to where it's supposed to get to, your homeostatic gets back to where it's supposed to be, um, that inhibits the release of glucagon from your pancreas. Um, Glucagon secretion is triggered by a decrease in blood glucose concentration, which makes sense because it'll help raise it back up. Your sympathetic nervous system, you're in fight or flight, you need energy. Glucose is energy. Circulating catecholamines from adrenal medulla, that's your epinephrine. That's going to also trigger your sympathetic nerve. That's helping the same triggers as your sympathetic nervous system. Um, those will also stimulate glucagon. Insulin, on the contrary, is the antagonist of glucagon. So whereas glucagon wants to increase your blood glucose levels, insulin wants to reduce it, right? So produced and secreted from the beta cells of your pancreatic islets, right? Stimulates following responses in target cells such as liver, cardiac muscle, skeletal muscle, and brain. Promotes the uptake and storage of ingested nutrients. So it lowers your blood glucose levels. Synthesis of glycogen in your liver. Remember, glycogen is just chains of glucose. So that's how your glucose is stored. Synthesis of fat from lipids and carbohydrates, right? So the food that you eat, some of the carbohydrates can be converted and stored as fats. And also the fat that you eat can be stored as fats, right? Insulin helps our bodies be able to do that. So they work. Glucagon increases our blood sugar as necessary. Insulin reduces our blood sugar, right? So both can help us maintain that homeostatic balance that we want to maintain. Hypoglycemia is our blood glucose levels are too low, can be caused by elevated insulin levels, right? So hypoglycemia, have low blood sugar. You'll hear people say you can be weakness or dizziness. You don't have enough energy, right? That can be caused by elevated insulin levels. So that can cause problems. Which can eventually lead to death because your brain uses glucose, uses carbohydrates, and so if your glucose levels are too low, eventually your nervous system is going to malfunction. Hyperglycemia, you have a high blood sugar, your blood sugar shoots up. That can be caused by things such as type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, a disease caused by the destruction of their beta islet cells that produce and secrete insulin. Remember, insulin is used to lower your blood glucose. So type 1 diabetes attacks is destruction of those beta cells that produce insulin. So you don't make enough insulin. Therefore, your glucose levels are too high. And your body's not able to lower your glucose levels. Leads to glucose and ketones in the urine, draws water from your extracellular fluid by osmosis, causes frequent urination, excessive thirst from dehydration. So you can have some problems there. You can also have it called hyperglycemia, can be caused by type 2 diabetes. Insulin's target tissues become insensitive to insulin. So the tissues that the muscle cells, the liver cells that the insulin targets don't respond to insulin. You become insulin resistant, and that's another way that you can have elevated blood sugar levels, and it tends to be associated, in this case, type 2 diabetes tends to be associated with obesity. Chronic hyperglycemia, high blood sugar, can damage your blood vessels, result in decreased circulation to tissues, non-healing wounds, and eventually amputation. You'll see people with diabetes, with type 2 diabetes mellitus. You'll see them as it progresses, that they can eventually have limbs amputated, which is obviously terrible. Other issues of their eyes, of their kidneys can happen because of, they have this elevated blood sugar. All right, so that can be a bad thing when your body is not able to maintain its homeostasis. What are the feedback mechanisms? Remember, this is very similar to all other endocrine system mechanisms. You have a stimulus, blood glucose level increases, right? So your blood glucose level is too high, it's above its normal range. Beta cells of the pancreas detect it. Beta cells increase your insulin secretion. Insulin causes your blood glucose levels to drop, increasing glucose uptake by cells and storage of glucose. And then it gets back to normal. Your body decreases your insulin secretion. That's a slide just showing you that. The reverse can happen. Your blood glucose levels decrease, right? That can be a stimulus as well. The alpha cells release your glucagon, triggers your breakdown of glycogen, formation of new glucose. Your blood glucose level starts to raise back up to normal, and then we stop secreting the glucagon. And that's a slide just showing you that. So same sort of pathway as the other hormones that we've discussed. Right, so what are some other glands that are hormone secreting? All right, so we have we'll just go through this quickly. The pineal gland. This is a component of your epithalamus and your diencephalon, which is in your brain, right? Secretes melatonin, which is different from melanin. Melanin is what gives us our color. Melatonin appears to be related to our sleep regulation center in our reticular formation of our brainstem. So it helps with our sleep-wake cycle. We have the thymus, which secretes thymosin and thymopoietin. I never know how to pronounce that word. But it helps with our T lymphocytes. Remember our T cells and our B cells. Those help with our immune system. So this, the thymus gland helps with the maturing of our T cells, which, those helper T cells are help fight off pathogens that enter our bodies. Right? We have our sex hormones, testes and ovaries, responsible for production of our sperm and our eggs. Okay. Testes produce testosterone, which testosterone is hydrophobic, binds to intracellular receptors that influence various gene expressions. So it passes through the plasma membrane and affects the DNA. So affects different gene expression. Right, testosterone can help stimulate bone growth and muscle mass. Also, development of male secondary characteristics helps. That's what helps. One of the testosterone? One of the things that makes males male? Estrogen, cells of the ovary, are estrogen and progesterone. Right. Males produce a small amount of estrogen, just like females produce a small amount of testosterone. Females produce testosterone. Did I put it on this side? Yeah, and in the adrenal glands, because they don't have testes, obviously. And males produce a small amount of estrogen in the adrenal glands. But the estrogen stimulates in secondary female sex characteristics, regulates your menstrual cycle, and has some effects on some other tissues and organs. The progesterone, physiological effects include body preparation for pregnancy. supportive fetal development during pregnancy. It also has some other effects as well. Right. Adipocytes, your fat cells, they produce some hormones, a hormone called leptin, which is one of the hormones that helps us have that feeling of I'm satisfied, so you don't eat too much. Some people have a lot of people have researched leptin and thought, well, hey, if we can produce more leptin, then we will have that feeling of satisfaction sooner and therefore eat less food and therefore gain less weight. But it doesn't quite work that way. And so there's a slide in here if you want to read about that a little bit more. It doesn't quite work exactly that way. Therefore, just giving people more leptin will not reduce their appetite to the extent that they would lose weight. The heart also has some endocrine function to it. You have this atrial natriuretic peptide, triggers relaxation of smooth muscle cells and blood vessels, increases vessel diameter, vasodilation. Also affects the kidneys, enhances water excretion from the kidneys. Both of these effects, vasodilation, increase in size, natriuresis, water excretion from the kidneys, decreases blood volume and lowers your blood pressure, right? If I expand my blood vessels, there's less pressure on the walls of the vessels. If I expand them, if I decrease my blood volume by excreting more water, remember, so your blood is red blood cells, also your blood plasma. Plasma is primarily made of water. If I excrete more water, I have less water in my blood, therefore I have less blood pressure, right? So ANP helps lower blood pressure, decrease blood volume, lower blood pressure to work together. You also have the kidneys, which have a couple of different endocrine functions. Erythropoietin, which acts on the red bone marrow to stimulate development of new erythrocytes. Those are your red blood cells. Okay, so you have renin, which helps maintain blood pressure through the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. And then vitamin D, in response to sunlight and skin, converted to its active form in kidneys under influence of parathyroid hormone, which helps us with our calcium. And these are just charts pulling all those together, the different functions of these other endocrine organs. That is the end of this chapter.